Welcome to Missions Life, where we share resources and encouragement for current missionaries, future missionaries, and those praying for missionaries. Missions can be hard, and we want to help you face the challenges of life, leadership, and ministry. We want your life to bear fruit for the gospel wherever you are. I'm Kyle Ferran, here with my co-host and wife, Heather.
Today on the podcast, we have Elizabeth Smith with the organization TCK Training. She's currently in Cambodia with her family. And if the term TCK is new to you, don't worry, she's going to explain what a TCK is. And I've just been really excited for this podcast interview, having personally benefited from all the resources and knowledge that they have. Elizabeth spent 5 years doing missions work in Papua New Guinea with her husband and 2 children, and she's now the COO of TCK Training. TCK Training is committed to helping globally mobile families thrive, and in her role, Elizabeth helps families all around the globe through debriefings and trainings so that they can thrive. She travels the world together with her own family, and she says sometimes providing in-person services, but always enjoying the travel. We're just really excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a privilege.
Yeah, we have a really fun but hard personal experience with TCK Training. We were getting ready to transition out of Tanzania to move up to Portugal, and our kids were really struggling with the transition and a lot of emotions. And wouldn't you know, Lauren Wells, the founder of TCK Training, was in Tanzania doing a seminar at our international school. And I remember, I can picture it to this day, sitting in this little classroom. It was still kind of hot and sticky. And she's unpacking just how kids grieve and ways we can be supporting them as parents. And I'm crying kind of in the middle of the room and trying to ask questions and taking all these notes. And it was just such rich information for our family right at that time, because I was making some mistakes in the process, and we had made some mistakes when we transitioned from South Africa to Tanzania. And, you know, organizations like this that get good information out is so helpful to parents and to this mom's heart. I really needed to hear everything she had to say that day.
Yeah, so thank you for being on, Elizabeth. And we just wanted to give you a chance to share just a little bit about your journey to missions for you and your family.
Yes. So I grew up kind of with this idea that I wanted to be a missionary. And so straight out of college, started working toward that goal. And my family and I started in Papua New Guinea. My son had his first birthday there, and we actually took 3 months away from our work in Papua New Guinea to have my daughter in Australia. So my kids grew up, they learned to walk, they learned to talk as we were doing Bible translation there. And that was such an amazing time for me. But one of the things that really became apparent while we were working in Papua New Guinea was that I had TCKs, and I had no idea what TCKs needed in order to thrive.
So I'm going to jump in here really quickly and ask you, what's a TCK?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. So TCKs are third culture kids. And we use this term third culture kids to kind of highlight how when you take a child out of their passport country and you welcome them into this host country where you're letting them spend a significant portion of their childhood, really what ends up happening is when they go back to their passport country, they realize that they're no longer culturally the same as their passport country. And they're not really culturally the same as their host country. Really what they're in is the separate third culture. And so we find in this third culture circle, we find missionary kids like our own children. We also find military kids and diplomat kids and business abroad kids. And so there's a lot of people who form this community of third culture kids. For me, it was, of course, missionary kids that I was trying to figure out what can we do to help support you and raise you really intentionally through these challenges that I hadn't experienced growing up.
No, absolutely. You know, I think a lot of us parents are in that same boat. I know there have been so many sleepless nights where I'm thinking, am I ruining my kids? Like, really, is this damaging to my children? I think because
Yeah,
I maybe didn't know enough or know how to support them best.
right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a common problem.
You guys were there in P&G, and what was next for you guys?
Well, 2020 happened, and during that year where so much was happening, one of those things was transitioning out of that role. And as I remember thinking, what is next and what is the Lord calling me to in this season, I remembered this huge void in preventive care resources for TCKs because I had looked this up. I had tried to find resources and I couldn't find really anything.
Hmm.
And in that same year, Lauren Wells had published Raising Up a Generation of Healthy Third Culture Kids.
Such
And
a
so I
fantastic book.
reached out to Lauren. Right. It was incredible. When I saw it pop up on my Amazon search suggestions, I was like, this is the book that I've been looking for years. How did I miss this? And it was because it was only just released. And so I reached out to Lauren and I found out that she had this experience of being raised as a TCK, started working with TCK families who are about to leave, and through that had really started blogging on this idea of preventive care. And preventive care is this idea of like, what can we do now to help our kids thrive in the future? And
Hmm.
so she was starting to work in that field. I wanted to be supporting in this space too. And so we connected, we started working together. And that's how I got the opportunity to start working with TCK Training.
That's awesome. That's neat to see how God moves us along and prepares us for the things He has for us in the future.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So to dive right into maybe a little more aspects of TCKs, you get to work with a lot of TCKs. And what do you see as some of the characteristics or coping strategies um, in TCKs that are thriving? That maybe are learning some of the parents are learning things on how to help them and set them up for the future. What comes out when a TCK is healthy and doing well?
I love this question. I think that so often we as parents are like looking at our kids and we're thinking like, do you have the characteristics and do you have the skills and do you have what it takes in order to succeed? And really what we've seen as we are working with TCKs is that it's not so much about anything that a child has inherently, but really about what us as parents provide for that kid. And the thing that we have seen is most impactful is having a solid support system,
Hmm.
having emotionally safe spaces. That when kids go through hard things, that they have, especially when it's their parents, someone that they can go to and share those hard things and be met with grace and compassion and listening to the point that they feel heard. And when kids have that in place, that builds resilience for them. And
Hmm.
that is kind of that foundational support that they need to really set into thriving in the future.
Hmm. So, what are some things that you see that, or you suggest for parents to do to help create some of those safe spaces?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we talk about a lot at TCK Training is the idea of positive childhood experiences. And so these are about 7 different types of experiences that research has shown cultivates resilience in kids. And
Hmm.
so one of these is feeling heard. And when kids can, like I said, bring those emotions and feel like their parents are listening to them, feel like they understood, feel like they got it, that is one of those positive childhood experiences. Another one is feeling prioritized. And sometimes this can be really hard for TCKs when the work that their parents are doing is so important that they may feel sometimes like they're not prioritized over the work. But when we can really emphasize to our kids explicitly that they are more important than our work, that sense of being prioritized is another one of those positive childhood experiences. Also, a sense of safety, having friends, having a sense of belonging in their wider community, having traditions, and then also having two supportive non-parent adult relationships. And I like to help kids figure this out by asking the question, do you have people who love you? Right? And trying to figure out, other than mommy and daddy, like, do you have people who love you? And trying to figure out, can they name two people? Do they have those people in place? And so what I've seen to really help kids thrive is parents making these subtle adjustments to make sure that these positive childhood experiences are in place for their kids. And when we have that support system of parents who listen, of friends, of belonging and community, of supportive non-parent adult relationships, that really bolsters a child so that even when they go through hard things, they have the resilience to be able to thrive through them rather than having that really tear them apart.
Wow, that is fantastic information. Is that in one of? I know we're going to touch on resources that TCK Training offers and provides, but is that list, is unpacking that in one of the books, or how would a parent dive a little bit deeper into that specific concept? Those 7 things.
I think the most convenient way to look into that is we have a free mini series on our website on positive childhood experiences, where there's a short video that talks about each one of those, what it means, why it could be hard to implement in a globally mobile lifestyle, and how we can work to achieve that. So I can provide you that link. And
Yeah, we'll be able to list that in the show notes. That's great. I like how simple it is, but it really gives, it would have given me as a mom something tangible to work through and make sure I was
yeah,
providing that for children, for my kids.
it's so simple. And when we are globally mobile, it's so easy for those things to get dropped. And so it just requires that like extra level of intentionality where we thought about it and we went the extra step to make sure that that got plugged into place.
Yeah. And I think that the key word there is just an intentionality. That a lot of times, instead of having your kids be an afterthought, to have the intentionality to do that and to set up those things before there's a problem, so that you can work on those. What would be some of the warning signs that a TCK is struggling? That maybe there's an area there that, just an early warning signs that people can be looking for to see and notice when things are not going well.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think when parents come to us with their kids, oftentimes they recognize so many of those signs. They're really obvious signs, right, that our kids aren't doing well. And then there are also some more subtle signs. And one of those subtle signs is that our kids say that everything is great all the time. When our kids aren't acknowledging that hard things happen, that can be a sign that they don't feel like they have permission to acknowledge that hard things are happening. And so we know, especially as adults, that good things and bad things happen, and that our emotions about that are both comfortable and happy, and they can be uncomfortable where we're feeling mad or angry, and that's normal. And sometimes we find kids who just want to say, nope, everything's fine, I'm happy, I don't have a care in the world, all is well. And what we have noticed is that what those children often need to hear is that it's okay to not be okay, and that grief processing is really important. And so in the course and context of our debriefs, we help kids to, one, we help to identify those patterns in kids to see if they're all positive all the time. And then we also help bring that awareness that processing grief is really important and needs to happen, and it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about the debriefings and that processing grief that you mentioned?
Yes. Yes. So at TCK Training, one of the things that really we launched out of the door with as we recognized needs in this community was that there was a lack of robust debriefs for children. Oftentimes, organizations would debrief parents, but wouldn't provide that same intentionality and care to the TCKs. And so parents were wondering, okay, but what about my kids? And so TCK Training stepped in and said, well, we'll provide debriefs. And so we started to do this. And the thing that's really wonderful about the TCK Training debrief is instead of asking kids, okay, so how did it go? Tell me what happened. We go so much deeper and way more intentional as we take time to provide emotional education for kids, as we take time to ask them about how these changes have impacted their sense of identity, as we look into the grief and loss that was present and help them kind of outline all of the different things that did happen and invite them and teach them how to process those things, and all the way through thinking about our subconscious expectations for the future. And so our TCK Training debrief really does a phenomenal job at digging in so that we're not just looking for surface level answers. We're not just looking for, oh, it was okay and everything's great, but we're actually taking the time to dig deep and uncover the things that need to be grieved so that kids can have processed grief that isn't stacking up behind them as they try to enter into adulthood.
Yeah, that's so critical. I mean, I know our kids, a lot of TCKs move around a lot more than our kids did, but our kids were 8 years in South Africa and then 3 years in Tanzania. And then our oldest only spent 2 years in Portugal and left. And besides just moves, MKs say hello and goodbye permanently to so many people that come through, even just on the mission field. So it might not be them leaving and grieving, but also staying and grieving as they're saying goodbye to, coworkers and friends or family. That idea of the stacked grief was really profound for me as I sat down, and you can hear me get a little bit choked up about it, and thought about the things my kids grieved and on a continuous level, and could see definite times in their life when they just came too fast. The things to grieve, the things they needed to process. At that time, I didn't really have any resources to dialogue appropriately with them about it, but it definitely was on my radar that this is a lot for a kiddo.
Yeah. And as we go through our life story and these things are stacking up, they're accumulating, they're piling up into this, and we call it at TCK Training, this grief tower. If these things don't get intentionally processed, they will relentlessly pile up until a point where they topple over. And so one of the things about our debrief is that we're equipping parents to be able to receive these hard things that happened, to be able to listen well to their kids when they share about these hard things, and ask really profound questions to help them unpack that and process that, so that not that it goes away, these things don't ever go away, like they still happen to us, but instead of piling up waiting to topple over, we can put them on the table next to the tower. We can unstack it so that it isn't at a risk of collapse. And so that's really what we hope for TCK families, is that they're empowered to be able to process their grief and build resilience so that they can enter into adulthood thriving.
So you guys do debriefing for kids, but then at the same time teach the parents then how to keep moving forward with the grief process?
Yeah. So in our debrief, we have portions that is just with the kids. We have portions that's with the whole family, which is really wonderful for getting to see some of those patterns about how parents are interacting with their kids, and help parents recognize some of those patterns that they're in. And then we have times just with the parents. And during these times, we're
Mm.
doing a lot of parent education, and we're also equipping them to be able to process moving forward. Now, that's just in the context of our debrief, but at TCK Training, we also provide a huge library of recorded workshops. And so a lot of what we do at TCK Training is training about TCKs. And so we provide these workshops to help parents understand so much more about what their kids are going through. These resources that I was looking for back in Papua New Guinea to have a better understanding of how to support our kids through these seasons.
That's fantastic. Just off the top of your head, could you throw out a few of the names of the trainings that are available for people that are listening?
Yes, so we have the brain of a TCK thinking, which is held by a neuroscientist who helps us understand the way that our kids' brains work. We have a workshop on art processing for TCKs that has a bunch of really fun activities there, different projects that can be used for processing purposes. We have TCKs in anxiety, which is a really popular
Mm.
one, as a lot of parents are trying to help their kids process that. We also have one on discipling TCKs. We have over 70. I could keep going.
Wow.
Um, but it's a huge library and so many wonderful resources in there.
Very good.
That's fantastic.
A quick question for you on for thinking through parents, as you'd mentioned how parents need to give the space for the kids to be able to process and to share that in a safe space. And I can imagine that sometimes parents don't give that safe space or either intentionally or unintentionally, because as missionaries, we do have the work that we're doing is very important for the work of the gospel, and so sometimes the way parents talk could unintentionally shut down that sharing, so that kids don't feel safe sharing because the kids may feel like they're attacking the parents' ministry. How do you encourage parents to be able to create that safe space in some of the verbiage that they use, and even just for the parents, what are the ways they need to do to come to grips with the fact that to be able to separate their kids' emotions of going through difficulties with the fact that they're not attacking the ministry, they're just sharing the difficulty of the actual life and experiences. So how would you help parents in that process to be able to create that safe space and not feel attacked by their kids sharing in those things?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And most of our workshops really go into this idea of a safe space and how we can hold that. And we talk about shutdown responses, and we talk about the ways where parents with really good intentions of being an excellent parent, the best way that they know how, respond to their kids by explaining that this isn't this big of a deal. They don't need to be this upset about it because this isn't a big deal. And we can inadvertently downplay our children's emotions. We can tell our kids that they're incorrect about facts. And instead of actually hearing what they're talking about, we can be correcting. We can tell our kids that they don't have anything to complain about because the kids outside have it worse and competing with problems rather than being compassionate. And I think the one that you're talking about, especially with this job and the ministry portion of this, is defending, where when our kids are coming at us with all of their complaints, we want to explain why we're here. We want to explain the importance of our work. And we feel attacked by our children's strong emotions, and so we're explaining, we're defending, we're re-highlighting the purpose behind this thing that may have caused these really strong emotions. And ultimately, I think that those can all be reasonable responses at the right time. But the right time isn't the first response, right? And so instead of starting the conversations that way, what we want to do instead is start with safe space responses, where we're acknowledging that our children have shared something heavy with us, where we are affirming that it is reasonable to feel that way based off of their perception of reality. I lose people a lot on affirming because they're like, but what if they're wrong? And we're not affirming reality. We're not affirming their perspective. All we're affirming is the emotions that are happening there. And so I compare it to if my kid tells me that they're scared that there's a monster under your bed. Of course, I also would be terrified if there was a monster under my bed. Like, that makes sense that you would feel scared in that context. And so we're really affirming the emotions that they're experiencing. And the next thing, the final thing, is that comfort. How can we provide comfort to our kids? And so if our kids are coming to us with these heightened emotions, and they may even be bold face attacking the ministry that we are doing here, for parents too, and sometimes it's with the grace of God and the strength of the Holy Spirit, to take a deep breath and pause and to recognize my child is deeply emotional right now. And in this wealth and depth of emotion, there is a heart that needs comforting. And so to respond not by defending against the attack, but instead approaching our children and saying, my goodness, you are so upset right now. This is so hard for you. I see that. I'm here with you and I'm listening. Like, even that could be just such a comfort to children, to have that kind of reception and gentleness. And I think too that this is the way that God responds to a lot of the Psalms, when David comes and yells at God, and God is just like, my goodness, you have so many strong emotions right now. And I am here. And I am here with you in this.
Absolutely. He's near the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. We have a God that has given us emotions and loves us through them. Thank you so much for sharing that bit for parents. I was wondering, some of our listeners are, from supporting churches, family members back in the States. When a kid comes back that's either transitioning back to the States permanently, or they're on furlough, transitioning to a new location and grieving, either one of those scenarios, what would you say to, church members that are interacting with these kids, or family members? Like, what could they say, or what should they not say to help with this grieving process?
Yeah. I think one of the things that is most commonly said to kids on their return is, are you glad to be back? And that, it can be such an excruciating question when they are grieving the loss of their country, when they know what they're supposed to say, but there is so much grief present from having left this place that they loved and now being back here, when oftentimes that place felt way more like home than this place. Asking, are you glad to be back? Are you glad to be home? Like, these are questions that inadvertently hurt. And no one means it that way. No one's trying to be insensitive when they ask the question. It's just so natural for us to think that our TCKs would, of course, be happy to be back. And so to really, I think the difference is, or the pivot that people back stateside can make, is recognizing that there is grief in this conversation. I know that sometimes asking about the things that feel weird can make TCKs feel seen, where you can say, what's the weirdest thing about being back in America? What feels different here? What's hard to get used to here? and really allowing them to express the discomfort, because a lot of people don't ask about that. A lot of people just want to know that they're happy to be back. And so really allowing them to, inviting them to share the hard things can be a really great way to let TCKs know that they're seen by you.
That's fantastic. We were home for a 9-month furlough, so longer than we're normally home. And we put our youngest in a Christian school in the States for a semester, and 7th grade, wondering how in the world is that going to go. And I was bringing Natalie and one of her friends home to play after school, and I heard in the back of the car this American friend ask Natalie, "So you've been in the States for a while. What are some foods you're missing from Portugal?" And Natalie's face just lit up. And I thought, wow, that was such a fantastic question that engaged her, acknowledged her life in Portugal. And I was thinking, man, I wish everyone could ask those type of engaging questions with our kids, because the response from Natalie was high energy and happy to answer, because she was missing all the pastries here in Portugal that we eat all the time, and trips to the cafe and stuff. So, I think you're spot on. I was just thinking in my mind, how can I, as we head off to furloughs or heading out to churches, maybe even give some questions ahead of time, like, okay, my kid's transitioning, or this is a rough spot. These are some great questions that, as my kid's awkwardly standing at the missionary table, here's some ways you can engage with my kid. I think there would be some good response to even helping our churches prep for stuff like that.
Yeah. I love that idea. And I love the idea of asking your kids what would be great questions. Like, I think in inviting our children to be a part of that, and to a degree, even modeling that self-advocacy, where they are allowed to tell people what feels comfortable for the engagement with themselves. And so I really love that idea of prepping churches ahead of time with a toolbox of fantastic ways to be able to interact with our TCKs. What a brilliant idea.
A very simple way is just, it's kind of piggybacking on the question that was asked there with the food, but just, in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, you talk about how to just engage with people, and people love to talk about the things that they love. So just asking questions in that genre of, what's your favorite vacation place to go when you're overseas, or what's your favorite food, or what's been your favorite place that you visited, or but not just leaving it broad of what's your favorite thing about your country, but going into those specific areas, and it gives those kids an opportunity to talk about the things that they enjoy and the things that they love. It's just that balance of we have the hard times, but we also have the good times too. And so giving them those opportunities to talk about both of those things, because I think I mentioned that word identity, and I think that's just a real key part to that is their identity, and anything we can do to allow them to express that helps them in that process.
Because I think it was always confusing for our girls. They'd come back and be like, so now when I land in America, am I American? Like, that whole who am I, and what kind of answers do I have to ask? Do I have to say I like America? That they knew they'd get asked so many questions, and a lot of times it wasn't questions that helped bring out their life, showcase who they were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to say on that topic of identity that you found helpful for MKs or for parents to be aware of, that just what's going on there with their identity, and just how that is constantly in flux and in change, and when you move, it's not just like a move from like Michigan to Ohio. It's a change in identity for the kid, and how they can be aware of that foundational level, and how changes can threaten that identity level, and then how to help with that.
Yeah. I think one thing that is really helpful for parents to lean into is to avoid trying to just name an identity and instead helping their kids honor the pieces that come together to create this mosaic of identity, where instead of saying, no, you're not American and you're not Portuguese, you are a TCK. You're just a TCK. That's what you are. That's the whole identity. What we see is that kids then start making decisions based out of being a TCK. And so they'll say things like, well, I can't go to one university for 4 years. That's not what a TCK does, and I'm a TCK. And so, or I can't hold a job for more than 2 years. That's not what TCKs do, and I'm a TCK. And so we see these patterns that aren't super beneficial at all, but they align with that identity that they were told to cling to. And we don't want them to cling to the point that they're not making good life choices. And so instead, if we can help TCKs identify all of the different pieces that come together to comprise their identity and honor each and every piece of that story, what we're able to do is help them see that through this amalgamation, they have a very rich sense of identity that gives them a basis for connecting with so many different people and finding belonging in so many different spaces through that.
That's really good.
Yeah. It I noticed in college, some of my fellow MKs that came back had a delayed start, as they were not able to connect well in their new culture, because they were so clinging to the old that it really hindered them from then transitioning into the American culture and being able to thrive there. And so I think that is I like the idea of that, just mosaic, rather than clinging to just the TCK or MK type thing, because then you just stay in that mentality forever and don't actually take on the new parts, because we've had to learn every single place we've lived. We've had to essentially reinvent ourselves as a family. Like, you can't do the same activities. You can't do them anymore. We can't go to the game park here in South Africa, or here in Portugal where we're at. But just everything about how you go through you do life together, it all changes wherever you go. And as MKs, TCKs go back to the States for college or whatever, they're going to have to adapt again. And if they cling to that too tightly, it really does slow down that process of being able to adapt and to thrive there. So I like that idea there of the mosaics. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I think there's so many things we can do to help kids really celebrate each component or each part that makes up who they are. And I remember moving up to Tanzania and getting introduced to the school there. And literally the first event we went to before they were even a student, or they had just started being a student, was the in a big international day. And, they had their parade of nations and everything. And our kids came with some South African stuff, that because all the kids dress up in traditional dress and things, but they weren't really sure, like, do we have to go with the Americans? So there's a lot of Americans. We're, passport country's America, but we just, our whole childhood was South Africa. And what I loved was, as South Africa was getting ready to, do this parade, one of the South African teachers grabbed my children and is like, you've got to walk with South Africa, because you've lived there. And they walked with South Africa. And then, America came around and they ran off with the Americans to, walk this parade of nations. And, they get up here to Portugal, and when they're taking the international picture and my kids decide, do we hold the Tanzanian flag or do we hold the South African flag? But I love the fact that they've created space to not be like, well, you're American, like you need to hold the American flag. But they could let my kid, depending on which country they were missing the most, is kind of what it came down to, choose which country to celebrate in that moment. And I've never really stopped to think about until this conversation right now how important those events have been. I mean, they talk about those type of things all the time. That freedom, I think it's the freedom to really lean into the different components of their life. So I'm going to start using that term mosaic because I mean, I really like that. It's completely fitting to what our kids' lives look like.
Yeah.
Yep, putting together all the broken pieces.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful processing kind of breaks down this difficult concept of emotional processing that feels really nebulous and breaks it down into very achievable steps. I've got flowcharts, I've got questions, there's diagrams, and it just makes it feel a lot more accessible to parents who feel really uncertain about how to start. And so those are really fantastic resources, book resources for parents moving forward. But then again, we have so many workshops on the website for people who prefer not to read and would rather somebody just tell them the answers. Those workshops are such a fantastic resource.
That's awesome. And can people find those on Amazon or the books?
Yes, the books are all available on Amazon.
Okay, great. Anything else you'd like to say to parents, parents of MKs to encourage them?
Yes. I think about how Heather was saying at the beginning, just the awareness of all the mistakes that she made, not knowing this information. And I think that is something that I hear constantly as parents are processing this, where they think, oh my gosh, so I've screwed up my kids already. and just that the grace of the Lord is sufficient. And I think something that is really powerful for me as I'm learning and growing is recognizing that the author of life could have informed me about this sooner. I could have learned about this earlier, but that is not how the author of life wrote out my life. This was the moment that I learned this information. And in this moment, I get to apply that and put that into practice. And so just trusting the Lord through this, that He's providing the education that we need at the right times for us in our stories. And even if we have kids who are grown up and out of the home, that now is a good time to circle back and repair if there's anything that needs to be apologized for or repented of. If there were things that we didn't do perfectly, we can go to our kids and we can say that I'm sorry, even when they're grown, and it can still make a huge wealth of difference. And so I just like to take the time to the word that I was looking for, it's not there. Cast out shame, because so often I know that is present for parents.
Very much so.
That's good. Well, at the end of a podcast, we like to ask a few fun, random questions. So what's something you've read recently or listened to that you've enjoyed or found helpful?
There is a book that I just found recently called Raising Kids with Big Baffling Behaviors by Robin Goebel. And I have loved reading this so much. It's so much of the same content that we present at TCK Training, but TCK Training focuses on that globally mobile experience, where Robin focuses on how to help kids get emotionally regulated and how to help our kids when they're having these really big, strong emotions, and we need to be supporting them through that.
That's great. I've never heard of that one. Another question. And it's kind of fun, what activity or hobby do you like to do to stay energized and refreshed? And I know this is going to hit home with, all of the people listening because we're so mobile too, and sometimes never get to stay in the same place. So what things can you do to stay energized and refreshed on the go?
I love to travel, which may
Convenient.
yes, I mean it's very convenient. But I think one of the things that I talk with TCK families a lot in this is so many of them have not touristed the areas where they live
Mm.
because they're there for work and they're there for ministry. And so instead of like going to the fun spots where they get to enjoy the place where they live, they're missing out on a lot of these locations. And so what I like to do is go out and see the place that I happen to be in this season. And we especially like markets.
Mm.
Home improvement stores are some of our funnest places to go visit. South Africa has a really nice one. What's the name of the one in South Africa? I'm forgetting.
For home
For
improvement?
home improvement?
Yeah, they have a phenomenal home improvement store.
I don't know.
Not sure.
You'll have to
I know
message
the
me
hardware
when you figure it
store,
out.
but I'm not sure about home improvement.
Yeah, well, I'll ask my husband. My husband knows the answer to that one.
Got it.
There you
That's
go.
He
his
just
thing.
wanders. Yeah, here it's called Mr. DIY. That's just where you just go and look around. And
That's really
see.
funny.
Yeah.
Now, are you
And
guys
so
more
it's not
beach or
always tourist
mountain?
attraction. Beach for sure. I am afraid of the mountains because I am afraid of falling off a cliff.
Oh.
So
Valid fear.
the driving in mountains stresses me out. But I love the beach and I would like to spend all of my time there, especially if there's
Awesome.
good snorkeling.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm made for snorkeling. I'm super buoyant. I can just float and, look at the fish and flip my fins every once in a while.
You probably had some nice snorkeling in Medang where you guys were in PNG then.
Oh, it was incredible. World class.
Oh,
Right off. And we would go to Jice. Did you go to Jice while you were on vacation?
I don't remember the names when I was a kid. There was a little island that we took a boat over to a little island just off the coast, and that was the best that we had seen. I remember seeing one of those nice poisonous water snakes, but other than that, it was really great.
Crazy. Oh, that's phenomenal. Yeah, Madang was phenomenal for snorkeling.
Very cool. What's a resource, tool, app, or life hack that you found helpful?
We have used Habitica in my family. Habitica is an app that gamifies your to-do list.
wow.
And you can work together as a family team to fight quests together. And so your ability to defeat the dragon does depend on whether or not you do the dishes. And so everybody in my family can have this little to-do list. And when my kids are like, Mom, I'm bored, like, well, did you do all of the things on Habitica? And now we have this like resource list that's got their school, it's got their chores, and it's as fun as a to-do list could possibly be.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Very good. And can you reset that daily, or is it like, how does that work there?
Yes, so it resets every day. And so there's a page that's like, these are things that have to be done. And then there's a page of habits. And so I can put on it like, say something that you're thankful for. And every time my kids utter a gratitude, they get to click it. And so they get extra points. Or like drink water is up there. So they can like get bonus points for staying hydrated. And then I can say what days of the week those things reoccur. And so we have things that just happen on weekdays and we have things that happen every day. So yeah, it's a powerful tool.
All right. So kind of a combination of habit building and a to-do list in one thing there. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Well, thanks so much for joining us today on the Missions Life podcast.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me. This was delightful.
Yeah, it has been an absolute joy, and we hope this has been a blessing to those that are listening. Well, that's all for this show, and we want to thank you again for spending your valuable time with us today.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider taking just a moment and giving us a great review. Your review will help people find the podcast and allow these resources to encourage more people. If you took something valuable away from this episode, please share it with someone who would enjoy it.
If you'd like to find the show notes, blog posts, and free resources for ministry and leadership, as well as some information on my book, Overflowing, visit kylefarran.com. That's KYLEFARRAN.com. Hope to see you soon on a future podcast.